What if the realist story about fascism, revolution, and the moral conflict of those involved isn't found in the history books, but in a galaxy far, far away? Andor isn't like most Star Wars series. It's a spy story and a political thriller. And for taking place in another galaxy, it's an all too familiar expose about what it feels like to live under fascism, to rebel against it, to become what you hate in order to destroy it. This is a story about empire, not just stormtroopers and star destroyers, but resource extraction, ethnic cleansing, propaganda, and genocide. It's about how authoritarianism operates in the real world, dressed up in sci-fi. George Lucas always said Star Wars was political, but Andor goes further. It tears off the mask. It shows the banality of evil and the terror of living under it. And it asks, what would you sacrifice to stop it? In this video, we're going to explore the philosophy behind Andor, its warnings, its lessons, and why it feels more like reality than science fiction. Andor is a two-season prequel series to the lauded 2016 Star Wars movie Rogue One, and it's absolutely essential viewing. Like Rogue One, not just for longtime Star Wars fans, but for anyone interested in politics, rebellion, or the mechanics of power. It dives deeper into the meaning of evil empire than any Star Wars project before it, telling an all-too-real story of fascism, colonialism, and the personal cost of resistance. At times, Andor is a literal manifesto, shout out Nemec, laying out the stakes between freedom and tyranny, and at others is a revolutionary playbook of what it takes to get the job done. It continues a long tradition within Star Wars, exploring morality, power, and the shifting lines between good and evil. We've always rooted for the rebels. We know the Empire is evil. It dismantles democracy.
The rebellion will continue to gain support in the Imperial Senate.
The Imperial Senate will no longer be of any concern to us. I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
Possible. How will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy?
The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Fear will keep the local systems in line.
Rules through overwhelming military force and build planet-killing superweapons to keep entire star systems in line through fear. But most Star Wars stories haven't shown us what it feels like to live under that kind of regime as a regular person. Andor does just that. It shows how oppression works in the everyday, how people are watched, manipulated, detained, tortured, and discarded. And that's what makes it hit so hard. It feels real, uncomfortably real. George Lucas grounded Star Wars in our own world. He famously compared the Rebel Alliance's asymmetric warfare to the Viet Cong, positioning the United States as a stand-in for the Empire.
You did something very interesting with Star Wars. The good guys are the rebels. They're using asymmetric warfare against a highly organized empire. I think we call those guys terrorists today. We call them Mujahideen, we call them Al-Qaeda.
When I did it, they were Viet Cong.
So it was a very anti-authoritarian, against the man kind of thing, nested deep inside of a fantasy.
Or a colonial, we're fighting the largest empire in the world.
Right.
And we're just a bunch of hayseeds in coonskin hats that don't know nothing.
That's right.
And it was the same thing with the Vietnamese.
Yep.
The irony of that one is the little guys won.
Right.
And the big, highly technical English Empire, the American Empire, lost.
Yeah.
That was the whole point.
The image of a ragtag rebellion uniting against a distant colonial oppressor conjures the American Revolution. The rebels do speak in American accents.
Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
The Imperials speak in clipped British tones.
Where is the rebel base?
And of course, the original trilogy was laced with World War II imagery. The Empire as space Nazis, complete with jackboots and authoritarian iconography. When I was a kid watching Star Wars, the moral binary was clear. Blue lightsaber equals good, red lightsaber equals bad. For a secular kid, Star Wars was practically a religion. But as I grew up, Star Wars also matured. The prequels added layers. They were at times derided for being too political. But if you want to explore how democracies become dictatorships, how republics fall and fascist regimes rise, you have to explore politics. The Phantom Menace was about how taxation of trade routes could lead to war. That might have hit audiences harder today than it did in 1998. Revenge of the Sith shows the Republic vote itself into tyranny. Cue the thunderous applause.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
You burn our American flag, you should get immediately mandatory 1 year in jail. And they say, he is a fascist, he is a fascist.
The sequels mostly retreated from this complexity, but Andor embraced it. It picked up the mantle to mature Star Wars and evolve it, grounding the story in lived political and historical experience that we can relate to. If the prequels taught us that good and evil aren't fixed, that good can become corrupted, and what was once good can become evil.
Have you ever considered that we may be on the wrong side?
What do you mean?
What if the democracy we thought we were serving no longer exists, and the Republic has become the very evil we've been fighting to destroy?
Andor takes this idea further, that good and evil are sometimes unfortunately intertwined. Andor shows a world where evil is the norm. Evil permeates this society so that morality is viewed immoral by the powers that be and society at large. In order to fight this system, in order to resist evil, the rebels in Andor are forced to commit immoral actions they wouldn't normally commit. Essentially, the Empire's system coerces immoral actions by otherwise moral people. We're often taught, especially as kids, that when we face injustice, the moral path is to turn the other cheek, take the high road. But we literally have seen people being trampled on the high road. We've seen peaceful protesters beaten and pepper sprayed on the news. We've seen evil prevail. Andor has a different message. When faced with the question, is it ever right to do something ethically wrong to stop a greater evil? Andor doesn't hesitate. It answers with a resounding yes. It's not a triumphant yes, it's a tragic one. In season 1, Luthen Rael delivers one of the most chilling monologues in the franchise, admitting that to win, he must become what he hates.
You need heroes, Lonnie, and here you are.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm. Kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there was no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
He said, I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. Not because he wants to use those tools, but because he has to. These aren't feel-good hero moments. Andor doesn't have a lot of backslapping and celebrations. They don't applaud what they must do to fight. Luthen also said, I'm damned for what I do, and I burn my decency for someone else's future. By the end of the series, we know that Luthen's task was a thankless one, unable to be appreciated by those he spent his life trying to help. The rebel leaders only begrudgingly acknowledged his contributions to the cause. Andor is about sacrifice, the sacrifice rebels make to fight evil. Season 2 shows us what revolutions look like on the inside. We're shown political infighting, not just among Imperials, but between rebel factions, a situation that hits close to home for most community organizers, let alone revolutionary movements around the world and throughout history. We are shown different factions and players that have different political goals and beliefs about the means to achieve those goals. We are shown how they work together and how they work against one another. Forrest Whitaker's bombastic Saw Gerrera is more worried about spies from other rebel factions amongst his ranks than Imperial agents. That tension between unity and paranoia is the tightrope every real resistance walks. We also see the brutal machinery of the Empire more clearly than ever before. Refugees, stateless people, undocumented labor, exploited economically, erased culturally, discarded violently. Watching agents of the state harass and abduct undocumented labor on a farm didn't feel like a galaxy far away. We are shown the power of the Imperial state and how it wields its power to achieve its goals. In Season 1, due process is limited and prison sentences become more severe. The prison population is used as slave labor, labor we ultimately find out is being used to construct the Death Star. In Season 2, we are introduced to the planet Ghorman. Again, to construct the Death Star, the Empire needs to mine a rare mineral. They need neodymium and praseodymium for magnets used in electric motors and generators. Wait, sorry, those are rare earth minerals found in Greenland.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. One way or the other, we're gonna get it.
In Ghorman, the Empire needs to mine deep substrate foliated calcite for their energy program. The mining process would leave the planet mostly uninhabitable. Before the Empire even set up their new bases of military and mining operations, they launch a propaganda campaign to vilify the Ghorman people. The Ghormans are labeled dangerous, anti-imperial, resistant to mere imperial presence. Sound familiar? It's the same language every empire uses to vilify the people it wants to displace. We're shown clear references to history and current events through the lens of Ghorman. They even sound familiar. The sound of the Ghorman culture is intentional. The language spoken by the Ghorman people was designed phonetically to resemble French. Soft consonants, fluid syllables, and emotional cadence. Part of the Ghorman story feels like a chapter from Vichy France. A foreign occupation, an underground resistance, spies and back alleys sending secret messages. Part of the Ghorman story resembles the French Revolution, a popular uprising, songs of solidarity. But other aspects of the Ghorman story reflect more current events. False flags, police instigation, massacres, and genocide. After Imperial plans to annex Ghorman territory are exposed to society, Ghorman protesters fill the infamous Palmo Square to peacefully demonstrate. But Imperial agitators fire on their own troops in order to escalate the violence. Stormtroopers and death machines respond by massacring these protesters in Palmo Plaza and continue on to decimate the surrounding community. The result is near extermination of the Ghorman people. This part of the story started to sound a lot like Gaza. When the news starts to reach the centers of the galaxy, those that speak out are silenced. They are arrested as traitors and agitators. The Ghorman senator gives a chilling warning as he's taken by Imperial authorities.
It's my people today and yours tomorrow. Remember this day. Remember Ghorman.
This sequence leads to a passionate speech on the floor of the Senate by Senator Mon Mothma. Mon Mothma, one of the most recognizable politicians in the galaxy, stands before the Senate and calls the Ghorman massacre what it is: genocide.
What took place yesterday, what happened yesterday on Ghorman was unprovoked genocide. Yes, genocide. And that troop has been exiled from this chamber.
It's not a quiet declaration. It's met with outrage. Imperial loyalists jeer and protest. They try to drown her out, but she says it anyway. It's a moment of cinematic courage that offers a sharp contrast to real-world silence. In today's world, most senators can't even utter the word genocide. So when Mon Mothma speaks, it feels like a release, a rare moment of truth. The scene lands like a gut punch, not just because of the fictional stakes, but because it reflects the very real horrors unfolding in Gaza. It evokes the image of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib standing alone on the House floor, censured for the crime of acknowledging Palestinian suffering.
We are human beings, just like anyone else.
Jeered by her colleagues for simply naming the violence. In Andor, Mon Mothma is not some radical outsider. She's part of the system, a high-ranking senator, a woman born into obscene wealth, married into aristocracy, performing the rituals of elite society while secretly funding a rebellion. And when she speaks out, it's not performative. It's dangerous. She's calling out the Empire's crime from inside its core, knowing it could cost her everything, her seat, her family's safety, and her life. That's what makes it heroic. Not because it changes everything overnight, but because she does it when silence would be easier, safer, smarter. Mothma's courage is an inspiring example for us all to follow. And that's what Star Wars is at its best.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side.
It's inspiring. It's hopeful. Rebellions are built on hope, by the way. Andor isn't just a reflection of current events in history. It's an inspiration to take action and fight injustice around us. That doesn't mean we all need to become a spy and blast stormtroopers. Any act of morality in an unjust system is an act of rebellion. I recall Nemik's manifesto. The brilliance of Andor is that it doesn't just teach us about the past or warn us about the future. It inspires us to see the need for revolution in the real world. Andor doesn't sugarcoat the sacrifice or romanticize the struggle. It paints us a bleak, tragic picture of resistance, not to discourage it, but to drive home what's at stake. So for those who are willing to make those sacrifices, and to anyone fighting injustice and evil in any galaxy, remember, you have friends everywhere.
I have friends everywhere.
Wait, if you liked this video, co-produced and narrated by my good friend Joe Walters, be sure to show him love in the comment section. He's contributed to this channel in the past, and he'll continue to do so in the future. As you know, we cover geopolitics and propaganda, but we also have a history of covering propaganda in entertainment and other thought-provoking content. So if you like Joe and you want to see more of this kind of content, be sure to let us know in the comment section. And if you feel inspired by this video and want to join a group of well-intentioned, passionate activists to raise awareness and take meaningful action to change the world that you live in, check out Jedis for Justice. It's a group that wants to organize and unite fellow Star Wars fans to raise awareness about social justice, human rights, civil rights, and the environment. So check out the pinned comment of this video and give them a follow to stay updated. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.
Trust nothing. No laws.